Welcome back, everyone. Get ready because today's deep dive is going to be a wild one.
Yeah, we're about to tackle the intersection of religion, language, and internet humor, all thanks to a very particular question that popped up on Reddit.
Okay, lay it on me. What's this question that has us diving into such a unique mix of topics?
So imagine this. What if God himself appeared and was like, hey, by the way, you've all been saying my name wrong this whole time?
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also slightly terrified. Go on.
And then he says, it's actually Jod.
Not even
J-O-D.
Joe.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, at first glance, it sounds like something you'd see in a meme, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, the more you think about it, the more you realize there are some pretty profound implications to consider. And the Reddit thread we're diving into today is a testament to that. People went all out, from linguistic debates to theological discussions, and of course, a whole lot of memes.
So what are we focusing on today in this deep dive?
Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to sift through all the noise and try to find those golden nuggets of insight.
Love it. Always up for a good treasure hunt. So where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, one of the first things that jumped out at me was how people immediately latched on to the implications for taking the Lord's name in vain.
Oh, yeah, like all those common expressions we use, like without even thinking. God damn it, for God's sake.
Exactly. Suddenly, those phrases sound very different, don't they?
Joe, damn it. Okay, yeah, I can't even say that with a straight face. But you're right, it makes you think about how deeply ingrained these phrases are in our language.
Right. And it gets even more interesting when you consider the whole mystery surrounding God's true name, the Tetragrammaton, YHWH. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with this,
Yeah, I'm going to need a little refresher here. What is that exactly?
it's basically these four Hebrew letters that represent God's name, but the vowels are lost to time, so no one knows for sure how to pronounce it.
Okay, that makes sense. But why is it such a big deal that we don't know the vowels?
Well, especially in Judaism, uttering God's name is considered incredibly sacred. Like, it's almost taboo to even try.
So those people on Reddit trying to guess the pronunciation, like Yohawihi and Yowiwahaya, are they, like, poking fun at a serious religious concept?
You got it. It's that blend of humor and genuine curiosity that makes this thread so fascinating. And it leads to some surprisingly depth conversations, too. Like, there's this one comment about an astronaut who asked a rabbi when to celebrate the Sabbath while in orbit.
Hold on, what does that have to do with God's name?
It's all connected to this idea of how even seemingly simple religious concepts get super complicated when you apply them to different situations. Jewish scholars have debated the intricacies of ritual observance for centuries. This astronaut's question is like a perfect example of that. How do you even define a day when you're orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes? It really makes you think, you know?
Yeah, that's actually pretty mind-blowing. So we've got people joking about Joe Dammit, we've got serious discussions about the sanctity of God's name, and we've got astronauts pondering the Sabbath in space. What a combo.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on the theological and philosophical implications of this whole Jode revelation.
Hold on, before we go there, I gotta ask, did anyone on Reddit actually come up with a decent pronunciation for YHWH?
Oh, there were tons of suggestions, some more serious than others.
Okay, I can imagine. So we have this thread full of jokes and speculation, but you said there were also deeper questions being explored. Like, what happens if we've been saying God's name wrong all along? What does that mean for our faith? How does that change our relationship with the divine?
Exactly. And those are the questions that really get you thinking. It's like this whole scenario throws a wrench in our understanding of religion.
Okay, I am definitely hooked now.
hmm
You mentioned that the thread takes a philosophical turn too. What does that look like?
Well, think about it. If God suddenly revealed the correct pronunciation of his name, wouldn't that, in a way, confirm his existence once and for all?
That's a good point. It's like undeniable proof. How would people even react to that? It'd be chaos.
Some people might feel their faith strengthened, right? Like, it's hard to deny God's existence when he's literally setting us straight on how to say his name.
But I bet others would still find ways to doubt.
Oh, for sure. There's even a comment that suggests some people might still want to, and I quote, kill God, even with this confirmation. It's a dark thought, but it really highlights the complexities of human nature.
Yeah, belief is rarely black and white, isn't it?
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. It's not just about surface level humor or linguistic debates. It's about using this hypothetical situation to really delve into those deeper questions about faith, doubt, and what it means to be human in a world where the divine suddenly becomes a lot more, well, real.
I love that. and I'm ready to keep digging. But before we move on, I'm curious about one thing. What about the impact on other religions? This isn't just a Christian God we're talking
Yeah.
about, right?
Exactly, and that's where things get even more interesting. The thread touches on Allah, the Islamic God, and what this could mean for different faiths. Like, would this create new factions or maybe even unite people under a single pronunciation?
I can already see the headlines. Jode versus Allah, the great pronunciation war of 2025 or something like that.
Yeah. And you know, we can't forget about the internet's obsession with pronunciation debates. The thread is full of comparisons to the GIF controversy. It's like, as humans, we just can't resist arguing about how to say things correctly.
Maybe it's a way to deal with bigger anxieties. Instead of arguing about politics or climate change, we can all unite in our shared frustration over a word.
There might be something to that. But hey, who knows? Maybe these silly debates can actually help us learn to communicate and disagree a little better.
Okay, now that's an optimistic take I wasn't expecting. So we've tackled the linguistics, the theological implications, and even the internet's inevitable descent into meme-filled chaos. But what about everyday people? How would they actually react to this Jode revelation? I mean, imagine trying to explain this to your grandma who's been saying God her whole life.
Right. Family gatherings would never be the same. And think about the impact on interfaith couples or families. Would this bring them closer together or drive them further apart?
That's a question I don't even know how to answer.
Yeah.
It's like, would this shared knowledge of God's true name be a unifying force, or would it just highlight all the differences we already have?
It's a real head scratcher, isn't it?
It is. And what about atheists and agnostics? Where do they fit into all of this? Would they feel pressured to re-examine their beliefs, or would they just double down on their skepticism?
It's like this whole Jode scenario is one giant social experiment playing out in real time. How would humanity react when its core beliefs are suddenly upended?
I'm not sure I want to know the answer to that one, but that's a conversation for another time, right?
Absolutely. We've got a lot more to unpack. So, you wake up one morning, grab your coffee, check the news, and bam, God's been rebranded.
Like, I'm picturing a world where Twitter is just exploding with Jode memes.
I mean, can you imagine?
Uh.
But jokes aside, the Reddit thread actually paints a pretty interesting picture of how this could play out. There's this idea of like a global spiritual awakening with everyone suddenly recognizing the same divine entity, even if they call him by different names.
Okay, that's a nice thought. Everyone kumbaya and all that. But let's be real, that probably wouldn't be how it goes down, right? Human nature is a little more complicated.
You're definitely right about that, and the thread acknowledges that too. It predicts a lot of fracturing, you know? Like some groups doubling down on their traditional beliefs, rejecting Jode as heresy, maybe even forming new splinter groups based on how they interpret this whole thing.
It's like, who even has the authority to say what Jode means? The Pope, the Dalai Lama, some influencer on TikTok.
Exactly. It throws the whole idea of organized religion into question. Who gets to decide? And that uncertainty could lead to chaos, or maybe something completely new and unexpected.
Like, what if this whole Jode thing leads to people just taking a more, I don't know, DIY approach to spirituality? Less about institutions and more about personal connection.
That's an interesting thought. It's like a giant reset button for faith. And speaking of resets, the thread also brings up the economic side of things. Like, what happens to all that religious merchandise?
Oh my God, you're right. All those God bless you t-shirts, what would Jesus do? Bracelets.
Mhm.
Talk about a marketing nightmare.
Right. It'd be a total rebranding bonanza. You'd have Jod Squad merch popping up everywhere.
I can already see the Etsy shops going wild. Jod-themed candles, Jode-inspired wall art. The possibilities are endless.
Don't forget about religious tourism. Imagine the pilgrimage sites. Would people still flock to them? Would new ones pop up based on interpretations of what Jode means?
Wow, you've just created a whole new Joan economy. But okay, let's move on to the economic apocalypse. What about the personal level? Like, imagine having to explain this to your devout grandma.
Oh man, family dinners would never be the same. And think about interfaith couples or families. This could either bring them closer or tear them apart.
Yeah, it's a total wild card. Would this shared knowledge of God's true name, bridge the divides or just make them wider?
And then there's the question of, like, atheists and agnostics. How would they react to this sudden proof of God's existence? Would they suddenly become believers? Or would they just find new reasons to be skeptical?
It's like the universe is throwing down the gauntlet. Here's your proof. Deal with it. But beyond the individual level, this could also have massive societal implications.
Like, would this lead to mass conversions? Would existing religions completely fracture? Would governments get involved? I mean, the possibilities are kind of terrifying, to be honest.
It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, except the train is filled with, like, existential questions and theological debates. But amidst all the chaos and potential for disaster, there's also a glimmer of hope, isn't there?
Hmm. I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
Maybe, just maybe, this whole Jode thing could actually be a catalyst for some real positive change.
Like what? Give me some hope here.
Like, what if it sparks a more open, more compassionate dialogue about faith and spirituality?
Mhm.
What if it forces us to move beyond the dogma and the rituals and focus on the stuff that actually matters, like connecting with each other and finding meaning in our lives?
Now, those are some Jode vibes I can get behind. It's like a reminder that faith isn't about blind adherence to rules, it's about searching for something bigger than ourselves.
And sometimes that search involves a healthy dose of cosmic
Yeah.
humor, right?
You know, you're right. Sometimes you just gotta laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Exactly. It's like this Jode thing is a big cosmic wink from the universe, telling us to loosen up, question everything, and not take ourselves too seriously.
And you know what? I'm here for it. I'm ready to embrace the Jod. But before we get too carried away, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. The internet's love affair with pronunciation debates. We talked about GIF, but this whole Jode thing reminded me of another classic one.
Are you talking about Nike? That one still gets me every time.
The age-old battle of Nike versus Nike. It's like, no matter how many times the company tries to clarify, people just can't let it go.
It's like we need these pronunciation wars as a way to define ourselves,
Yeah.
even if it's over something as silly as how to say a brand name.
It's about language and identity, about belonging to a particular tribe. And when you apply that to the Jode scenario, it's not just about God's name anymore, is it? It's about how we choose to identify ourselves within this new spiritual landscape.
Whoa, that's deep. So are we Jodists, Jodites, Jode heads? I can already see the internet going wild with this.
It's like the birth of a brand new cultural phenomenon, all thanks to a single pronunciation change. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
And who knows, maybe this whole Jode thing would actually lead to a more playful, less dogmatic approach to religion. Like maybe it would remind us that it's okay to laugh at ourselves, to question everything, and to embrace the mystery of it all.
You know what? I think you might be onto something there.
As we've been talking about this Jode thing, I can't help but think about how much language really shapes our beliefs. Like, this isn't just a name change, it's messing with the whole way we think about God.
Yeah, the words we use, they carry so much weight, the rituals, the prayers, even the way we talk about our faith, it all changes when the language shifts.
It's like looking at a painting with totally different colors, right?
Yeah.
Same picture, but it hits you in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Did anyone in that Reddit thread actually, analyze the name Jode itself?
Oh, yeah, there were some deep dives into the linguistics of it all. Some people pointed out that it actually has similarities to other names for died in different languages, like Yod in Scandinavian traditions or Hod in Spanish.
Huh, interesting. So it's not totally out of left field, linguistically speaking, but it still makes you wonder, why Jode? What's the meaning behind it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some people were trying to find hidden meanings in the Hebrew letters, connecting it to Kabbalah and all sorts of mystical stuff.
Ooh, that's getting a little esoteric for me.
Right, but then others were saying, hey, maybe there isn't some deep hidden meaning. Maybe it's just a name, and the point is to accept it.
I kind of like that. It's humbling, right? Like, maybe we're not supposed to overthink it. Just have faith. And speaking of faith, this whole scenario really shows how differently people approach it.
Totally. Some people would see this Jode thing as a test, like, are you going to stick with your beliefs even when they get challenged?
And then others might see it as a chance to, I don't know, start fresh, re-examine their faith,
Yeah.
connect with something bigger than themselves in a whole new way.
And for people who've never really believed in God at all, this could be a real game changer. Imagine having to suddenly confront the fact that, hey, maybe there is a higher power after all.
Talk about an existential crisis. It's like the universe is saying, here's your proof, now what? But thinking bigger, how do you think this would affect religion as a whole? Organized religion, I mean.
Well, that's the big unknown, isn't it? Would there be like a mass wave of conversions? Would existing religions split into even smaller groups, each with their own interpretation of Jode?
Imagine like a global interfaith summit with all the religious leaders trying to figure out what the heck to do.
Oh man, can you imagine the arguments? The theological debates? Twitter would be on fire?
It'd be total chaos. But also kind of amazing to witness. It's like a giant social experiment watching humanity grapple with something so fundamental, so unexpected.
It's a reminder that even in this day and age, with all our technology and information, there's still so much we don't know. There's still room for mystery, for wonder, for moments that make us question everything.
And honestly, I think those moments are more important than any answers we could come up with.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes it's the questions that matter most.
Well, on that note, I think we've officially reached the bottom of this particular deep dive. We've laughed, we've pondered, we've explored all the crazy what-ifs of God deciding to go by Jode.
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. But hopefully, it's given you, dear listener, something to think about.
What would you do if the world suddenly changed in such a mind-blowing way? How would you find your place in it? How would you connect with something bigger than yourself when all the old rules no longer apply?
Big questions, no easy answers, but hey, that's what makes life interesting, right?
Exactly. So keep those conversations going, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep exploring. Who knows what other strange and wonderful rabbit holes we'll stumble upon in our next deep dive. Until then, thanks for listening.